Good afternoon. Welcome to Evolve Through God. My name is Angela Goodman, and today I'm so excited. I have a guest on that I met over the weekend at a show called Movement Maker Live, and I had the pleasure of listening to her tell her story, and I knew that you all needed to hear it, and she needed to be on Evolve Through God. So I'm not going to waste any more time, and I want to welcome Martha Kartaoui to the show today. And Martha, I'm just going to jump right in with you because you have so much to share that likely we're probably going to need more than one episode. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm just honored that you asked me to be on it. And if it has to do with God, I'm all in. So thank you.
Oh yeah. I'm so excited. Your journey is one of hope. It's one of understanding and trauma and all the things that you've been through. So I can't wait for our listeners to hear how amazing God has been in your life and how amazing you are and the strength that you have. So let's just start out. Talk to me about how you were first introduced to God. How did you come to know God?
Well, that's kind of a tricky question because in my understanding of who God is now and in the personal way that I know God now, that's a new development. It's only the last, I would say, 10 years that I really embraced who God says I am and developed a spiritual relationship and a personal relationship with God, right? But with that being said, I was born and raised in a religious cult and I was introduced to God, but it was the God of the Old Testament. It was the God that was angry. It was the God that was going to make you pay for your sins. It was the God of brimstone and fire. It was the God of heaven and hell. It was the God, right? And so I don't equate the God that I know now, the love and mercy and grace and forgiveness and all that I know to be true with every fiber of my being. I don't equate that to the God that I was brought up with.
Because and I have to stop you there because I literally got full on chills when you said that. And I'm sure that there are people listening today who don't even realize that God of the Old Testament and God of the New Testament really are two different ways. They really are, in all honesty. So were you born into this cult or were you brought into the cult?
I was born into it. So my parents joined the cult about 4 years before I was born. They joined it with 2 children. They ended up with 9. Wow. So I was born into it. Yes.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing to me. So you remember growing up, what were the religious practices like in the cult? Did you all worship multiple times a week? What did that look like?
So every facet of our involvement in the group was a source of prayer or worship or meeting. It consumed all of our weekends because the leader had to stay in the middle of us in order to control us, right? Oh. So, the weekends we would gather at his compound every single weekend. And then during the week, we also met on Wednesday nights at somebody's house that was part of the group. So we were always in a state of meeting or worship. But it wasn't personal the way that I know God to be now. But yes, It was all encompassing as I was growing up.
So what kind of things did they tell you about God in order to control you?
Right. So I've had these conversations because I wrote a book and I really wanted to understand how it started. And so I had lots of conversations with my parents and with elders, just understanding how did people buy into this, right? How did people buy into the control, the isolation, the manipulation, the brainwashing, right? Because my parents are very smart people. My dad, my dad has a doctorate. My mom, my parents are smart people. And so what I came to understand is that the leader, who was an Indian man from India, who was born Hindu, converted to Christianity because he had a vision from God that he was called to lead his people. And so it started out as very love your neighbor, take care of your, your friends, like
Mhm.
community. It started out as a very community movement. And it was about Jesus and it was about, his teachings. But then power, ego, sex, all of those
Mm.
things took over the message, but it was too ingrained in the people already. And they looked up to him and idolized the leader as God himself. And so he
Wow.
put himself between us and God. He was our intercessor. He was who we prayed to so that he could take our prayers to God. So we didn't know anything growing up. I didn't know anything about having a personal relationship with God. I had a relationship with Cult Man, and he had the relationship with God, right?
Wow. Wow.
And
So
so
did he use the Old Testament
so
only?
initially yes, I
Okay.
grew up with only the Old Testament. I didn't even know the New Testament existed.
Oh, wow.
So but as the years went on, he created his own mishmash of religions. He started pulling from Hinduism, he started pulling from Judaism, he started like anything that fit his whatever delusion, right? And we all just followed because for us kids, it's all we knew. We
Yeah.
didn't know there was a world outside that believed something else, but we thought we were the chosen people. We thought we were special. We thought that we had an insight that nobody else had, right? And so
Mm.
we were always taught that we're different from the world. We're not of the world, right? And so it was this it turned into this very dangerous uh yeah thing, but it didn't start out that way.
So do you remember about how old you were when it started to kind of transition?
No, because everything happened so succinctly and so
Mhm.
like incrementally slow. Like the analogy that we use in my family is that it's like putting a lobster in a pot of cold water and then turning up the heat really slowly. The lobster has no idea that it's being boiled to death, right? And that's what happened to all of us is like things incrementally changed so slowly, right? That nobody asked questions.
Mhm.
And he took away our ability to ask questions because if we had a question, we went to him. We didn't talk amongst each other.
Oh,
We
yeah.
like that. And if you had questions, that means you didn't believe. That was used against you. If you had questions, then there was something wrong with you and wrong with your heart, and God didn't like that, right? Like that's the fear that was
Wow.
built into me as a small child, is like you don't question, you don't ask your parents, you don't ask other people within the group. He was the only one that you could ask questions to, but why would you ask questions when you were being told what to do, right? You
Right.
didn't I didn't know I had questions.
So it was total and complete mind control.
100. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
like I shared in my speech, when I got out at age 26, I
Mhm.
had to escape the compound because he chose me at 18. I moved into the compound. And when I moved into the compound, even more of my life was controlled because now he controlled literally what I ate, where I slept, when I took a shower. Like he controlled everything. And so when I escaped at age 26 or just about 26, like I didn't have the ability to function as an adult because I had never made a decision on my own. I didn't know
Wow.
how to open up a bank account. I didn't know how to make decisions for myself. I didn't know how to like ask for things that I wanted or things that I needed. I didn't
Mhm.
have that ability. I was
Mhm.
like a little kid. I was literally a little kid in a 26-year-old body, and I didn't know how to function in this real world.
Were you at that time, and it's up to you if you want to go into any of the details that you go into in your story. I know it's not easy to talk about, so up to you on what you want to share. At that time that you, because I think you mentioned that you tried to run away, also. So at that time, like, do you remember what your state of mind was other than like just complete and total control by this person?
Um, the first time I tried to run away, I was 20.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I had fallen in love with a boy within the group, and we had made a decision to try to run away, to try to start our own lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the precipice of the first time I ran away.
Mm-hmm.
And as you heard in my speech, there was deep, dark, deep repercussions for that, because I got caught and brought back, and
Mm-hmm.
he got kicked out, and like it was a whole thing. When I left the second time and my final time, or when I escaped, I should say, because I didn't leave, I escaped, and I had to hide for 3 months, and they were after me, and I mean, it's a whole story. I have a book about it if anybody's
What is the name?
interested.
What is the name of the book? Because you
It's
mentioned the book.
Glory. Yeah, it's Glory Going All In.
Glory Going All In. Okay. And
Yeah,
we'll have it in the show notes also so you guys can find it.
perfect.
Yeah.
So when I made that decision to leave the second time, it wasn't for me. I left because I found my sister on the internet, and I found out she was pregnant with her first child.
Oh.
And she had nobody. My parents were still part of the cult. My siblings that were out, three of them were drug addicts, and the other ones lived across the states. She had nobody. She was by herself, and
How old was she?
She was 20. She's 18 months younger than me, so she was 24.
Okay.
And so something happened when she told me she was pregnant, and that flipped the switch for me. And I was like, I am going to find a way to make it home to be with you during this pregnancy. I'm going to escape. I'm going to figure out how to get out, right? And that was the switch that happened. That's where the courage came. It wasn't a deep desire of mine. It wasn't like I finally saw the light and realized that this was not true and that this was a manipulation or a cult. I didn't have any of those realizations. I literally found the courage and the strength to leave for her, because I loved her so much.
Yeah.
And I didn't want my niece to grow up without me, because I had grown up my entire life without any extended family, because we weren't allowed extended family if they weren't in the cult. And so I didn't want this next generation to grow up the way that I did.
Yeah.
And I owed it to my niece that was coming to be part of her life. And so that was my purpose. That was my mission, was just to get home safely so that she wouldn't have to grow up without me.
That is so brave and so courageous. And, Martha didn't allude to it yet, but the physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse that she lived through it as a part of that cult, the fact that you found the courage and the bravery and the strength to escape from all of that, to not know what to expect on the outside, to do that for both your sister and your niece. I want to praise you for that part of your life, for you to have that strength and courage, because that is not normally just found inside of us, right? Usually that's sparked from somewhere else. So I just want to share that with you. And I love that you're crying. I'm sorry to say that, because I love to see your emotion and your passion. You deserve so much out of everything that you've been through. So I'm grateful that you're sharing your story. So you get out and you find your sister, and your sister is pregnant, and you have your niece. So then where do we go from there?
Yeah. So I made it home safely. I had to hide for 3 months because his henchmen were tracking me like dogs. Like they were always one step, behind me for months. And then around 3 months after I'd been out, I finally confronted my dad. So my dad and mom were still in the cult. Cult man had separated my parents. So my dad lived in North Carolina. My mom lived in Wisconsin.
What?
And yeah, it's a whole story.
Wow.
It's a whole story. So I went and just showed up on my dad's doorstep. And when my dad came to the door, he basically told me to leave. He wanted nothing to do with me. How could I do this to Cult Man? How could I break his heart? How could he, after everything that he had done, the Cult Man had done for me, how could I do that? And I just broke down, and I was like, Dad, you don't know the whole story. Like, I need you to just listen to me for 5 minutes, please, just 5 minutes. And the bravest thing that my dad's ever done was to let me in his apartment and give me 5 minutes. And that 5 minutes turned into 3.5 hours where I got to tell him all of the things that had happened to me over the last 8 years of being in the compound. And to say my dad was devastated is an understatement because he had no clue. He had no clue.
And at this point, he was still a part of the cult at this particular moment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was still a part of it. But this conversation was the precipice of them leaving. And this was also the precipice of why I no longer had to run and hide, because my dad owned it and was like, no, you don't get my daughter any longer. You don't get to cross that line any longer. Like you're going to leave us alone. And, it changed everything for us. It changed everything for our family, because my parents left then. And my mom moved back to North Carolina with my youngest sibling, and we started the rebuilding process. And the rebuilding process was crazy painful. I resonated with something that you shared on one of your podcasts, and that was that you just were in work mode. Like you just, because you didn't know what it was like to be loved or cared for or celebrated or any of those things. You were just very narrow-minded of like, I'm just going to work my ass off. I'm going to make something of my life, and everything else doesn't matter. And that's what I did. That's what I knew how to do. I knew how to work because Cult Man had us working by the age of 4 or 5, right? Like manual labor, and like a cult is like everything is built by the cult, by our hands. It's so that's what I knew. That's what I understood. I understood work ethic. I understood the grind. I understood, so that's what I did. I just dove into working, and I built a career very quickly. And I just kind of just put up my blinders and said, the past is the past. I'm never going to revisit it. I'm just going to leave it there, and nobody's ever going to know. And I'm just going to start my new life. And here we go. And then, and my niece was born, and I got to be, one of the first people to hold her. It's like all these beautiful things were happening, but I was also just not prepared for any of it. Right.
Yeah.
And so, I get married. I'm out of the cult about 18 months, and I get married. And that was when things really started chinging for me.
What was his faith like?
So he was a Muslim.
Okay.
But he was not a practicing Muslim. But that was the rituals and things that he was part of. He didn't really know what he believed, but I was like, I had run from God totally. I couldn't understand that God was even a thing, because how could God be a thing if I had just gone through all these things for the last 26 years of my life? Like God can't be real, because if God was real, where was God when I was, being beaten? Where was God when I was being starved? Where was God when my body literally broke down because I hadn't eaten in 5 months? Like, where was God, And so I had run from God. So I didn't care what Sammy's religion was. I didn't care that he didn't believe in anything. I didn't care. It wasn't important to me. But because I had never had anyone to love me, because I had never had anyone to really see me. My husband was the first person to really see me and see through the walls that I had built and had surrounded myself with for decades, right?
Business Martha. You were business
Martha. Yes. And as he started breaking through those walls, and I allowed myself to be loved, and I allowed myself to be cared for, and I allowed myself to just be, my walls started crumbling. But that also completely imploded my life, because when your walls start cracking, you start having to deal with the past. Your past starts haunting you. So I went into crazy, insane, horrible nightmares. I went into night terrors. I went into sleepwalking. I went to wetting the bed. I went through just an enormous amount of re-traumatization because love was breaking through these walls, which meant I had to deal with the past.
Did you have
And my
any idea at that time, like what was
no,
actually going on? No,
no,
it just all
no.
started to happen and you were
Yep,
like, what is wrong? What's
yep,
wrong with me?
yep,
Yeah.
exactly. And then my physical body started breaking down. And, from the years of abuse and the broken bones that I had had that were never treated, like my physical body was breaking down. I had migraines, chronic back pain, chronic neck pain, bulging discs. I was labeled fibromyalgia, PTSD, complex PTSD. My physical body was falling
Hmm.
apart, and I had gained an enormous amount of weight, and I was just literally, my life was imploding.
Hmm.
And it was so crazy because I'm married. This is supposed to be the
Hmm.
happiest time of my life,
Hmm.
but I was torturing my husband because I hadn't dealt with my yuck. I had been honest with him. He knew about my yuck, but he was the one that had to console me every single night through my nightmares. He's the one that had to literally hold me down from fighting myself at night, right? Like he was the one that found me naked in a parking lot because I slept walked trying to run from myself,
Hmm.
right? He was the one that dealt with that.
Yeah.
My family didn't know any of this was going on because you're like everybody was trying to just numb and just trying to rebuild their
Right,
lives.
right,
We didn't
right.
have a support system in place yet. There wasn't that, and
Yeah.
my relationship with my parents was non-existent. I was glad they were out of the cult, and
Yeah,
I
and
was
then you
glad
didn't
they
know
were
what you needed at that time. I mean,
no.
how could you know how to even deal with that or what you needed? I mean, like you said, even at the age of 26, you were not able to make decisions for yourself even that late in life. So this point in time, you're what, 6 years later,
Yeah,
maybe? Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So it unraveled completely and utterly unraveled. And then I had become a therapeutic massage therapist, and I was in a continuing education class. And that was my aha moment because there was a time that the teacher said, if you haven't read this book, you should really read it because everything that we've ever been through is stored on a cellular level in our
Mm.
body.
What book
And
was it?
off the body keeps the score.
The Body Keeps the Score. Okay.
Yeah. If you haven't read it,
My
yeah.
clients need that. I think some of my clients might need that book.
Okay. Well, write it down. It's a great book. It maybe is not the best first book to kind of enter into this because it's very
Mhm.
medically based in some of the places, but it tells a lot. It opened up a world for me that I didn't understand.
Mm.
But when this happened, I was like, holy crap, this is me. My body is falling apart because of my past. Like my
Mhm.
past, this has to be my past. This has to be my trauma. This has to be right.
Mhm.
And everything just started like click, 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 making sense. And also, I'd been going from specialist to specialist to specialist to specialist in the Western medical system, right? And in our system,
Mhm.
and everybody just kept giving me another diagnosis and wanting me to take another pill and wanting me to, and none of it was helping. None of it. There was no pill to fix
No.
traumatized little Martha that was really stuck at 8 years old when the trauma began. There was no pill for that. There was no talk therapy for that. It wasn't available to me. And so when I made this like connection and I was like, okay, now I have a list of all these diagnoses, but yet nobody can figure out how to help me,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so I became my own advocate and I started researching and I started going to holistic practitioners and I like when you become open, literally the God starts putting things
Mhm.
in your path to support where you're going. And that,
So at this point in time,
yeah,
is this when you start to say, "Oh, okay, maybe there is a God
yes,
again?" Okay.
yeah. It was
Eh,
during this time where I remember a full surrender of like, if there is a God, I need something. So if there is a God, like, you got to take this pain away, right? You've got to either let me die, you got to kill me, you got to let me have an accident, or you got to help me. Like, that's where I'm at. And that was my prayer for years. You either kill me, you let me die, you let me have an accident, or you fix this, you heal this. It's too painful.
And how old were you for this?
Around 30.
Okay.
Around 30. And so when these things started clicking, I was like, okay, you start thinking, okay, there's something, right? I don't know what to call it yet. And people started coming around me talking about it, right? And I had been given snapshots of who God was or who Jesus was through Papa, who was my guardian angel in the cult, and who helped me physically escape the cult. And why I was successful was because of this outside man who I call Papa, that helped me start a new life. But he had told me, he was the first person that ever shared the love, the grace, the forgiveness, all of those things. And so during this same time, he and I still have a very close relationship. He lives in Wisconsin, but I visit him several times a year. We talk multiple times a week, and he prays over me all the time. And I never tell him I don't believe. I never tell him I'm mad at God, because I feel indebted to him. I feel indebted to what he did for me, that it feels like if I I would be cursing in his face if I told him, whatever, I just let him pray for me, right? But when I started putting these pieces together, I was like, oh, this is what Papa was talking about, right? And it starts all kind of starting to make sense. And then I started finding help in naturopathic medicine, and I started releasing things that weren't mine. I started doing things like craniosacral therapy, EMDR, biofeedback, neurofeedback, cognitive therapy, things that make you go inward, and really address the pain and feel it to heal it. Like, I had to really uncover the layers and layers of the walls that I had built to survive, literally, right? I had to peel away that, and I had to go internally, and I had to start healing her. I had to heal the little girl. I had to go all the way back to when it started, the trauma.
At that time, did you obviously coming into understand God a little bit and having a relationship with God, what did that look like for you? Did you start doing any practices around your faith that helped you to start in the healing process?
So, as God would have it, I ended up having a big fight with my husband, and I stormed out of the house and I just went running. Because that was all I had done my whole life, was run, right? From pain, run from, right. So I just went running, and I literally ran into a church without knowing where I was going, what I was doing, I wasn't looking for it. I literally ran into the front doors of a church. And I remember looking at the doors, and it said, it said something about, do you know that Jesus loves you? And I was like, but does he? Anyway, it was a moment where, and then I just sat on the bench because the church was closed, and I just sat on the bench outside next to this sign, and I just bawled. And then I saw the meeting. It says, 10 o'clock on Sunday. So I snuck out of my house at 10 o'clock on Sunday and went to church because my husband worked second shift. And so he was sleeping. And so I just left and went to church. And I did that for a few months before I told him what I was doing, because I didn't want his opinion. Like, I felt like the first time I walked into that church, and the pastor, it felt like he was talking directly to me. And the message was directly to this little, this adult that was lost and didn't know anything. And it felt like he was speaking, "Dear Martha Glory Kartaoui, this one's for you," right? But that's how God does, right? He meets us where we're at.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of it.
And that was the first Sunday sermon that you sat through?
That was the first Sunday sermon that I ever sat through. And it was 2012-ish. So I would have been 30 something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was where it started for me. And then I got really interested, right? Like I went through the thing that you did with like, okay, I want to really see what I believe. I hear what they're talking about and I hear what they're passionate about, but does that really fit into and resonate with me? And that's when I really understood that I had to build my own personal relationship.
So what
And
did you start doing then when you
so
started
I went
your
on a
relationship?
voyage. I went on a spiritual journey
Okay.
of introducing myself to all different kinds of things, right? Because I wanted to be certain if I bought into something, I wanted it to be for me because I had been in a cult. I'd been controlled. I'd been
Mm-hmm.
told what to think. And I wasn't just joining another cult. And so I needed assurance that this is what I believed and that this
Yeah.
felt good to me. And I was building my intuition and my trust in myself at the same time. And so I went on this spiritual journey of really being exposed to other cultures, to other religions, to other gods, to energy, and to spiritualism. I exposed myself to all of that to figure out who it was that I wanted to have a personal relationship with. And what I kept coming back to is there's only one. You can call him whatever you want to call him, but there's only one. And that was what resonated with me the deepest. And so I really started saying, like, okay, this feels right to me. And now I want to build the connection. I want to open up the third eye, right? Like
Ah,
I want to
yeah.
expose myself to, like, if people say they can hear God, like I want to do that, right? And so, but yeah, and over these years, I've just continued
So
to,
what did your practice look like then? So how did you figure out for yourself how to make that connection? What did you start doing?
yeah. So for me, I can remember the first time that I was like, that's not my voice. I just heard something loud and clear, and that's not my voice. That's something deeper. That's divine. That's God. And I remember that. And I was probably like 37 or 38.
And
And I
what were you
remember,
doing? What were you doing though to generate that? Because there are just the people who listen to this that are like, I've never heard a voice. I've never
yeah.
heard that voice. How do
So
I make that happen?
I was doing mirror exercises. And if you don't know what mirror
Yeah, give it to
exercises,
them. Give it to them.
if you don't know what mirror exercises is, it's about looking at yourself in the mirror, but not looking at like the outside, but really looking into your own eyes and uncovering how you really see yourself. And it is a scary and uncomfortable thing if you've never done it. And I had never really looked in my own eyes because I had been told my whole life what to think about myself. I was told that I was fat. I was told that I was ugly. I was told that I was never going to amount to anything. I was told that, right? Like, so I had never looked in my own eyes. So I was going through this life coaching uh, sessions, and he had like really challenged me. He was like, Martha, if you want to go deeper and if you really want to explore who you are, you got to get to know yourself. And like I'm like 36, 37 at this point. Like, shouldn't I kind of know? Nope, I didn't. So I took this challenge with him, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go all in, because what also the cult had taught me is like, don't challenge me to do something because I will always do it because I don't like to lose, right? Like I had fought to actually live my entire life. And so don't challenge me. I will man up every single time. And so anyway, I'm in this mirror, and you have to look at yourself for 5 minutes for 40 days in a row. Try looking at
Five
yourself for
minutes is a really long time.
correct. And 40
Yeah.
days is a really long time. So I just remember like the first 4 or 5 days, I just would look at myself and bawl because all I could see was everything everybody else had put on me, everything. And like around day 5, 6 is when I heard God. And God was like, who do I say you are?
I love that.
Sorry.
And what did he say?
And I just remember being, that's not my voice.
Mm.
Who do I say you are? And so then I was like, okay, that must be God. And so then I said, God, who do you say I am?
Mm.
And like I was looking at the mirror and suddenly I'm saying, you are strong.
Mm.
You are beautiful.
Mm.
You are love. You are kindness. You are not your past.
Mm-hmm.
You are not your present. You are your future.
Mm.
You are loved. And so then for the next 32 days, me and God would meet in that mirror until it literally became who I was. And it was what I saw.
Mm.
And it wasn't easy, right? Like, because you have that breakthrough and then you're like, okay, but is that really me? Let's see tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
And so then
What's God going to tell me tomorrow? Is he going to tell me something different?
right. And so I showed up every single day and God showed up with me and just reaffirmed every single day, you are loved, you are held, you were never alone.
Yeah.
No matter what you told yourself or what others told you, you were never alone. You're here because I said you were supposed to be here, right? And so my deepest work has not been by reading the Bible and has not been, I'm dyslexic, so reading has always been a challenge for me. I no longer say that I hate it or any of those because I'm learning all kinds of things about myself as I uncover who God says I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so the biggest transformations that I've made in my journey with the Lord is by meeting with the Lord and understanding that I am perfectly and wonderfully made in the image of God and that he sees my scars and loves me anyway. He sees my sin and loves me anyway, right?
Yeah.
And that was where it really became personal.
I love that. And it's funny. It's hard to believe like we're already nearing the end of our time, which really is happened very fast. So it's a good segue though into, so I ask in each episode, I ask 3 questions to my guests at the very end. And I'm not gonna elaborate the first question for you because you just answered it so beautifully and eloquently, and it's not been a way anyone else has answered it to this point on the podcast. But the question is, what have you read or absorbed to really know God? And your response is, look in the mirror.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that I have learned about God is by looking at the woman that God's created and then looking around, right?
Yeah.
And yes, I have read a lot of books afterwards or listened to a lot of books because I don't read a lot, but I listen to a lot of books and I listen to a lot of stories of faith-filled storytellers, right? And their own journeys. And that's built an impression on me too, knowing that I am right where I'm supposed to be. And it just edifies what I already know about God. So, yeah.
And I think that's so beautiful because I do think that it's, God is within all of us. And I have not really ever thought about that before. And like I said, nobody's had that response to this point, but you're right. Just look in the mirror, right? He's inside all of us. Yeah, that's so beautiful. Okay, the second question, we haven't really talked about this much yet, but I'm interested in your answer for sure. So, and it happened to me in the very beginning of the call when you talked about the Old versus New Testament. But when do you know when you're in connection with Holy Spirit? Like, when do you know physically? Like, what does it feel like for you? And when do you know that that Spirit is with you?
So God is never not with me. I am always tuned in, turned on to the Holy Spirit because it's within me. So how can I ever be without it?
Mm-hmm.
It's within me. So it goes everywhere I go. And when I'm asleep, it's still within because it's within me. And I also am very intentional about creating the light bubble around me to protect me at all times. Therefore, the light bubble is God. It is that energy source that is God, right? And so I'm never without God or his presence or his love or his mercy or his forgiveness. I'm always in it because it's within me.
I love it. I love it. All right, and our last question. This one could be a little bit tough, I think. So when you were that 8-year-old Martha, where your life really started to kind of change, right? And the trauma really started to begin with you. Looking back on all of your knowledge that you have now and on all the relationship that you've had with God, what would you offer your 8-year-old Martha self as she starts to live through what she's about to live through?
Is you're way stronger than you'll ever know or understand or comprehend because you're never going to be alone. And the enemy will try to break you, but what God's created cannot be destroyed by man. And so you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And not only are you going to be okay, but you're going to be a light for so many others.
Yes.
Because that's who God's created you to be.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I just got full body chills when you said that too. Whew, what a light you are, my dear. What a light you are. Yes. And thank you for sharing your story, sharing your relationship today. Thank you for being so brave and so courageous. And, I look forward to getting to know you more. We didn't get much time to talk over the weekend, but we actually have quite a bit in common. And so I look forward to getting to know you better and to getting to know you more. And do you have anything else you want to offer to our guests today? Is there anything that you didn't get a chance to say that you'd like to offer here as we wrap up?
The only thing that I would say is trauma healing is very lonely or can be very lonely. And just understanding now that I don't have to go through it alone and that I never went through it alone, there's power in that. And understanding the actual most courageous and brave thing that you can do is make the decision to heal before your life implodes. And so just understanding that, reach out to someone, start the process. You don't have to go through it alone. And I'm here if you ever want to chat.
Well, that's awesome. And so how can they get a hold of you or follow you?
So they can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or they can find me on my website. I'm just my name. Find me.
Okay. And
I'm sure we'll put it in the show notes.
Yes, it'll be in the show notes, and your book will be in the show notes as well. And so grateful for you. Thank you so much for being on today. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Evolve Through God today, and we will see you on the next episode.